We are 26 minutes in. Oh my god.
This is going to be a four-parter.
Yeah.
I told you. Nemo hasn't even been captured yet.
I told you that I would keep us on track, and we have not. Okay. All right.
All right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Not Again, the podcast that brings college-level analysis to preschool-level content. I'm one of your hosts, Rebecca.
I'm your other host, Alan.
And today we are talking about Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo.
We are all done with Corey Carson. Thank goodness.
Yes.
I have been looking forward to this episode for a while, or these two episodes. I think that
It's going to go long.
It's going to go very long, and so I don't want to waste too much time with preamble, but I want to say a couple things. Number one, Finding Nemo came out 17 years ago.
Yes.
Which is bonkers to me. But just for the record, spoiler alert. In case you haven't seen it and it's on your list and you got it on Disney Plus like we do and you just want to watch it. Spoiler alert for Finding Nemo. We are not going to hold anything back. Number two, I wanted to remind our audience that the only reason Warren was able to watch this initially before we had Disney Plus is I owned the DVD. I'm a DVD owner. I like having DVDs. And so I want to remind everyone that I bought the DVD because I like this movie. The only reason we're going to be tearing it apart now is because we have seen it too many times.
So many times.
So many times. And the last thing that I want to say is that while the Flophouse is going to come up either this episode or next episode, we are not the Flophouse. And so in an attempt to avoid their style, their MO, I am going to not recap every single bit of the plot. I'm going to kind of assume that people can either follow along or they've seen it.
Yeah.
Because The Flophouse is an amazing podcast, though it is explicit rated.
But they do a lot of movies people haven't seen or shouldn't see.
Right.
And this is Finding Nemo, and most of you have seen it,
right.
I assume.
They do bad movies. They talk about them. They summarize their thing is that they summarize the bad movie and kind of just like riff on it. And we don't want to step on any toes, but that's going to kind of be similar to what we're doing here, except that Finding Nemo was a huge hit. So there's that. I think that's it. I think that we're ready to go. Yeah. So, Ari's sleeping in the next room. So if we're hoping no interruptions, but expect some.
There might be some stops and starts here.
He might be joining us again, like he did in episode 5. But yeah, I guess I usually say go back to episode 1 for an explanation, a more in-depth explanation of what this podcast is about, if you don't know. We'll just dive in to Finding Nemo. I apologize for nothing. So let's start. Now, we do have to bring up the foreshadowing and dramatic irony that they really lay on heavily at the very beginning. So for those who don't know, the plot of Finding Nemo is there's a clownfish named Marlin and he has a son named Nemo, and his son gets kidnapped by an evil dentist and he has to get him back. The end. Yes. And so he's talking to his wife Coral, and they have to name their egg babies, and he says, they'll name half of them Marlin Jr. and half of them Coral Jr. And Coral says, I like Nemo. And he says, we'll name one Nemo.
I found this scene interesting because it goes into biology a little bit. Like, they don't really seem to care too much about their children in this scene. It's not like they're naming every single one or they're talking about what their different personalities are going to be or whatever like that.
They also don't care about gender.
She says, what if they don't like me? He says, there's like hundreds of them. I'm sure one of them will like you,
well,
right?
That's the second part of this is he says, we'll name one Nemo, wink, wink, audience, wink, wink. And then she says, odds are one of them is bound to like you. And they just keep like foreshadowing that there's only going to be one.
There's only going to be one.
Because of a plot convenient barracuda.
Yeah.
Can I just say I'm very proud of myself for recognizing a barracuda. But I saw the movie and I was like, I bet that's a barracuda. And then I Googled it, and I think didn't I say that it was like on the Wikipedia list of like minor Disney villains?
Yes, minor Disney villains.
Minor Disney villain. This one barracuda that eats.
They should have named him. It should have been like Gary the barracuda. They just never talk about it in the movie.
Yeah, he just wants to be friends, but he accidentally eats them. Yeah. have decided that, especially since I just said I didn't want to do the Flophouse thing of going in order.
Yeah.
I've decided I'm gonna say some stuff like right up front. Okay. So the Barracuda eats Coral, the wife, the fish wife, and eats 499 eggs. And so Marlin gets these hang-ups when Nemo is older about the ocean being dangerous, and it's like clear that the lesson needs to be that
lighten up.
He needs to lighten up and let his son live his life and things like that.
Yeah.
But this is going to take a while, but please let me just go through some stuff here. Number one, the movie starts and Marlin loses 99% of his children and 100% of his wife to a barracuda.
Yes.
Then his one remaining child grows up a bit and wants to go to school. And Marlin says, no, the ocean is dangerous. And he's like, come on, Dad, the ocean is not dangerous. Let us begin. First of all, as soon as he says the ocean is dangerous, Nemo gets kidnapped by an evil diver dentist.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, he encounters 3 sharks. And these sharks happen to be friendly, except for that one of them catches the scent of blood and becomes unfriendly, so danger, right? Then they only get away from the sharks because of mines that explode. Then there's the evil dentist and his evil daughter. Then there is a jellyfish forest. Then there is, I'm going out of order, hold on. Not just oh my God, I didn't look it up ahead of time. The lantern fish, the
angler,
the anglerfish, the deep sea anglerfish, the jellyfish forest, the seagulls and pelicans. And I'm sure some more will come up that I've forgotten about. But I guess what I want to say is Marlin is right.
There's a lot of danger. This is a problem because in order to have an exciting movie, there needs to be peril.
Yes.
And so it's very difficult for the lesson to be lighten up. I don't know if we'll ever talk about the Secret Life of Pets 2. They do something very similar.
We will be talking about that eventually.
Where it's where the lesson is that like you need to lighten up about all your anxieties and worries, even though everybody almost dies in that movie 500 times.
Exactly. And on top of that, I wrote in my notes, and this is an important thing to point out, I wrote, Marlin either has 400 siblings or he's quite aware of what happens to 99% of fish babies. So it's not like he, like he maybe he was always wondering why, his parents only had one kid, but he never thought to ask, and now he knows or something. But... Nemo doesn't have 400 uncles and aunts.
Yeah, I'm going back.
Yeah.
I don't mean to dunk on Coral, but I'm Marlin's wife, but I'm totally going to do it right now.
Sure.
What was her plan? Right?
Oh, right.
She sees the barracuda. She looks down. She sees her nest with all the eggs. And I'm not going to, there's stories about mothers lifting cars off of babies or whatever, but, what was she going to do?
Marlin also attempts to defend her.
And, the only reason he lives is because, he gets...
knocked into the enemy.
He gets slapped around and falls down.
Yeah.
So, this wasn't a great plan.
I mean, we just wouldn't have been able to feel sympathy if she'd been and left her kids as a real fish would have done.
Yeah.
As we are going to discuss many times, there are issues in... Well, I guess kind of differently than there are issues of sentient car universes, there are a lot of issues that are brought up by sentient fish universes.
Yeah, sentient fish.
We talk about The Little Mermaid, where she marries a prince who lives on the sea, and they've already demonstrated that they consume seafood as their meals. And so she is friends with fish, and then is going to live in a place where they're going to eat fish. They're a fishing village.
Yeah.
And so to give sentience to those fish, it brings problems. But we are 10 minutes in, and we have only gotten through the first 30 seconds.
To skip around a little, since we're okay with doing that, later they talk to some sea turtles, and the sea turtles say go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
And they say they always find their way back to the sea.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. Almost all sea turtle eggs are eaten by birds and stuff.
That's how ecosystems work.
Once sea turtles are in the ocean, they're grown up. They're pretty safe. But
For sure. Those shells help.
Those shells help,
but
a lot.
They're soft to begin with.
Yeah, they get eaten so much, all the time. And so when the turtles just don't worry about it, they'll make their way back to the ocean. No, they won't. They very much don't.
Yeah, they kind of gloss over that. He's just you gotta trust them. But yeah, we will get back to the sea turtle. So I am okay with going out of order,
right.
but at the same time, I got to follow my notes or my brain's going to explode.
Okay.
So we've gotten through the first 30 seconds of the movie, and we've got some issues. We have some ish. But I did want to jump back because, you know, I love being a hypocrite and say that I like the gender, the lack of gender worries that Marlin has about his kids. Because he's just like, we'll name half of them Marlin, which is ostensibly his name and therefore a male name, and half Coral. Yeah. But he's just like, he doesn't seem to care which is half is which. It's not like he has to have half boys and half girls.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a Carmina problem here, though, where like their names have to be
fish names,
yes. Or like sea names.
Yes. Absolutely. And so it's like his name is Marlin, which is just a completely different kind of fish. Yeah. That is that fish's name Clownfish? Is he going to meet a Marlin one day named Clownfish?
Yeah.
But it's appropriate though, because as people have pointed out many times, clownfish are hermaphroditic, and so if there are no females around, the males will actually transform into females or something like that. Yeah. In order to, you know, and so they
very
joke
common
about,
in the animal kingdom. Frogs for and all sorts of stuff.
Hermaphroditic animals are Snails, common. Yeah. And so gender wouldn't be an issue to a clownfish. Yeah. He wouldn't care. So we could learn a lot from this clownfish family, except for dying. We should.
Yeah, they all do a lot of that.
Yeah, but we've talked about how Pixar took so long to have a female protagonist, and I was pointing out that the reason they couldn't do it for a lot of these movies is because they would accidentally stumble into kind of sexist stereotypes. Yeah. So if they'd reversed the roles here and Coral had still been alive, she would have been seen as like a frantic,
domineering mother,
hysterical, domineering mother, and like Ratatouille, if Remy had been a girl, it would have been a woman who really, really wants to cook and be in the kitchen. Yeah. And so they would have stumbled into problematic issues. Yeah. Not to say that they shouldn't have tried harder. Yeah, since they
could have just done that and fixed it, but they didn't do that.
They came around to Brave and they were like, she should be a princess, and then bears forever, and it's like, okay, and also, even though it's set in Scotland, we're going to use every Scottish stereotype we can come up with, and it's like, great, good job, guys, and then just straight back to male protagonists. And so okay, let us move on. So Nemo grows up, but he has a tiny fin because his egg was cracked. And at some point, I think in the What Have We Learned segment, we're going to have to talk about what this movie says about raising children with physical disabilities. Yeah. And does it give a positive message for that, or is it more problematic? And we'll get to that for sure. Yeah. It's just something to think about. I will say, like, I'm a huge fan of How to Train Your Dragon, as we will talk about if we are ever forced to do Rescue Riders. But they provided, I guess, spoiler alert for the How to Train Your Dragon series as well, but they provided a protagonist who has a physical disability and is incredibly competent and charismatic and lovable, and I think they did a good job with that. Yeah. Question is, did they do a good job here?
Well, we'll have to talk about that when we get to it.
So he has one small fin.
Yeah, which they call his lucky fin.
Yes, which they call his lucky fin. So Nemo is excited to go to school, which I think my guess is the entire movie started because they were like, hey, fish swim in schools, but school also means learning at a place. What can we do with that?
Yeah. Let's start there. Let's do some writers meetings about that.
John Lasseter was like, I need another mansion, guys. What do we got? Like,
how fish sometimes swim in groups? Yeah.
You know how fish don't usually love their children? Well, this time, what if they did?
What if fish had feelings?
Yes. So fish are what would be called an R-selected species, I believe, where they don't care for their children and they have a ton of them on the expectation that most of them will die, whereas we and elephants are K-selected species, where we have one or two and
few
we care
children,
for them.
And then we invest a lot into them.
I'm pretty sure I got the R and the K one right.
If you did, then somebody. If you didn't, somebody can just tweet at us.
Somebody will correct us.
Yeah, that's how the internet works.
Yep. So they go. He's so excited that he gets stuck in a tubular coral thing, is what I wrote. It's one of those things that like has little bubbles that come out of it. I'm not a marine biologist, okay? And this
that might just be. I mean, like that might just be like a fish tank thing anyway. Like
no, I think it's real.
Well, there's like deep sea vents or whatever. Yeah. But like that's I don't know.
Marine biologists can tweet at us too. Not again pod at not again pod. But he gets stuck in one of these, and Marlin, I forgot his name, and Marlin establishes his overprotectiveness by saying you'll never get out of there on your own, and helps him out, right? And then this is going to be called back later with Gil, played by Willem Dafoe. who is a foil for Marlin, when Nemo gets stuck in the plastic tube in the fish tank, which is almost the exact same situation. And when he asks for help, Gil says, no, you can do it yourself. Yeah. So, of course, the point of a character foil is to emphasize certain character traits. And so we see how the dad is and whatever. But yeah, he pulls Nemo out of the little coral tube, and that establishes his overprotectiveness. But then also they had to make sure that it was still very clear that he loves his son, so that it didn't get into like an abusive situation or a neglectful situation. And so they do like a tickle fight, and you know, and they joke around with whatever. And so we see that his intentions are
you have to be careful about that, because if you go around calling your son useless and not able to do anything without a little bit more context, it just seems kind of gross and abusive.
Yeah. So the next thing that we're going to jump to, because we're not going to summarize the whole movie, is their stingray teacher shows up and takes all the kiddos off to, you know, their lesson or whatever. And then Marlin is surprised when one of the other dads calls it the drop-off, which is, I believe, where they were living.
Yeah. Or they're on some sort of shelf, and there's, like, open ocean past a drop-off.
Right. I think that's where they were living when Coral got eaten, because they moved house.
Oh, I didn't notice.
It took me 9,000 viewings to notice that they did, because it turns out I'm a little sea anemone racist, but both sea anemones look the same to me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, why is he so upset about going there when he lives there? And then, like, after a billion times seeing it, I just went from 9,000 to a billion, but whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he moved. The new anemone is like
fear.
Yeah, the new anemone they live in is like it tucked away in like a craggy rock or whatever, and so it's not near that place. But overprotective as Marlin is, don't you think the first thing he would have done is check with the teacher about like where they're gonna go?
I guess. I mean,
he's shocked about what the lesson is. Yeah. So either he's okay sending these kids off with this teacher, or he's not. Like, he either trusts the teacher to take them wherever they're going to go, or he's not going to trust them. I do like, by the way, that there's a motif of dads at like father relationships throughout the movie, but for the most part, he talks to other dads dropping their kids off at school, which is not typically seen. You typically see the mothers dropping kids off at school.
There was the one with the fish in her mouth. Yeah, that was a mother.
Yeah,
but he starts talking to other dad fish,
which is appropriate for the seahorse, I think, because I think the seahorse dads like get pregnant or care for the children or something like that. Yeah. Again, not a marine biologist. I'll stop saying that soon. But yeah, so. I wrote Nemo gets in with a tough crowd.
Yeah, he immediately gets in with the neighborhood toughs. So yeah, like 2 seconds into school, Nemo has befriended the 3 worst kids. Yeah, they're not interested in stromatolitic cyanobacteria. An entire ecosystem in one infinitesimal speck. I think I said that right. Stromatolitic cyanobacteria. And so they wander off and encounter a boat and call it a butt. And that's hilarious, right? Yeah. So funny, butts. Except they speak fluent English in this movie. Oh, yeah.
And so not only that, but they
know what boats are and they know what butts are.
Exactly. So they show constant awareness of things they should know nothing about. And let's go into that. John Ratzenberger, who is in every Pixar movie, plays the school of fish that they encounter later and refers to butter as a side with cooked lobster.
Yes.
Which is
an undersea creature would have boiled lobster available to them.
Right. So how do they know about that? Marlin, while he is inside the whale, which we will definitely talk a lot about, references Moby Dick.
Right.
He says, "How do I chase Moby?" Bloat and the tank gang refer to the ring of fire coming out of the volcano, but fire should be the most foreign concept ever to them. In fact, I love the SpongeBob joke where Patrick's like, if we're underwater, how can there be fire? And then the fire goes out because cartoons, right? Yeah. And I also, I believe, I wrote this later, but Dory also says red flag going up. When she says, like, when they're encountering that trench that they're supposed to swim through, she goes, "Whoa, partner, red flag going up," red flag.
Yeah, flagpoles are not an undersea event.
So they have all these references and all these words, and
Yeah.
it's been established that they know English or they speak what we hear as English.
Yeah.
But when it comes time for the kids to know what a boat is, suddenly they think it's called a butt.
Yeah, well, this is the sort of thing that people talk about in all sorts of places. Like Han Solo says, "I'll see you in hell." You know, it's like, well, do they have Christianity in space a long, long time ago? Like,
yes. My next question, and this is one that I've been like dying to ask you for a long time, is: has Marlin not told Nemo the circumstances of Coral's death?
That would kind of read into his overprotective. Like, wouldn't tell him because like that would be too traumatizing to his little like fragile fish body.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So Nemo accuses his dad of being scared of the ocean. And it seems like he doesn't know how his mom died. Like, he seems almost to not understand why Marlin is scared of the ocean. And I feel like if he knew how his mom died, he might get it a little better. And so I feel like maybe Marlin kept it a secret.
It seems like maybe that's why.
Yeah, we don't. They never talk about it. As soon as she's dead, she's out. Like they do not talk about her ever again.
I mean that's a very Disney thing to have.
Yes, it's just kill the mother and she's no longer a thing. Like she's. I mean, honestly, she's kind of refrigerated a little bit. You know, the woman in the refrigerator trope, where the woman is killed just as a means to like motivate a male character.
Sure.
And like she becomes part of Marlin's backstory.
Yeah.
He is this way because his wife died once.
Yeah.
Well, I guess his wife couldn't die twice. He could have two wives, but
well, I mean, we don't really know about fish relationships. So.
Yeah, so he could have had an open relationship. But yeah, so I don't think it just doesn't feel like they've really discussed it. And I have to say, like, you got to be open with children. Like, to think that they can't handle something, can't understand something, it creates its own problems.
I mean, are we really to believe that he was so sheltered that he didn't notice that like other fish had moms, right? Like.
Yeah, like has he never asked like where was she?
Where's my mom?
That's true. I never thought about that either. So if they haven't discussed it, like he's gonna be like, hey, I noticed that like Sandy Plankton has a mom and a dad Plankton. Like, why don't I have a mom?
Why no me?
Yeah. Oh, I should have put like a trigger warning or something for like parent death. Whoops.
I mean,
I'll put it in the description.
It's Finding Nemo.
But yeah, if we're talking Disney, we got to talk dead parents.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in every Disney movie almost.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes The Incredibles so unique, honestly. So both parents are alive.
Both parents are alive.
Yeah. So next, Marlin was like, you can't do things. You think you can do things, but you can't do things.
But you can't, Nemo.
And Nemo says,
comes back.
I hate you, which is something that 75% of kids say at least once to a parent, I think.
I don't think you get to, I don't think they're allowed to leave your house until they say it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said it to my mom once when I was little.
Yeah.
But Marlin reacts like it's the end of the world. There's an episode of Seventh Heaven where Ruthie says, I hate you to her mom, and the music and like they zoom in on her face as her jaw slowly drops. It reminded me of that. Yeah. Like he just hits it really hard. But like, you know, kids say, I hate you. They apologize later. It happens. Usually before they get kidnapped, you know, and end up under a fishing net.
Well, it's kind of like your 6-year-old boy goes, I hate girls. You go, he'll never get married. You know, like, yeah, he'll figure, like, you know, depending. But, like, you don't work yourself into a tizzy over it. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, you said that.
Kids say stuff, you know? So normally I'm on the side of teachers. But as I explained in a previous episode, not if they do something really bad. Teachers don't rally behind teachers who have broken the law, for instance. But this teacher, the Stingray teacher, says to Marlin, I can assure you he's quite safe with me. No, he's not, bud.
Well, yeah.
You let 4 of your students wander off almost immediately. Like, it wasn't until Marlin showed up that you even, like, intervened at all. Like, they were gone. 4 of them. 4 students. So you can say he's quite safe with me all you want, but you didn't demonstrate that, Mr. Teacher Man. Okay. And so then Nemo, in an act of desperate rebellion, decides to swim out to the boat to touch it. And we have something that we haven't talked about in a couple episodes. It's time for a bad parenting alert.
What if they don't like me?
There's over 400 eggs. Odds are one of them is bound to like you. One of them is bound to like you. One of them is bound to like you.
yes, Marlin is a single father. He loves his son. He's trying his best. But I say this to my students. I say this to everyone who will listen. You cannot establish a rule if you can't enforce it.
Yeah.
It's what I talk about with my school having no hats and hoods as a policy. You cannot enforce that. I know because they haven't successfully enforced it in the years that I've been there.
Yeah.
There's always students wearing their hats and hoods. Why? Because they put them up in the hallway when no teacher says anything. Some teachers don't care enough to enforce the rule. And as soon as one teacher doesn't enforce the rule, they give that student the power to say, well, so-and-so lets me wear my hat. And it just, you just cannot. And then it's like speeding. How do you punish everybody who does the thing, right? You can't, and therefore it's not good. So, that sets a precedent for kids when they learn that you can't enforce the things you say.
Yeah. Being inconsistent. We talked about this in, I think, the last episode, where if rules are inconsistent, then it just confuses the children.
Right. Rules have to be consistent.
Yeah.
So what Marlin does is he yells at Nemo.
Right.
And I think we're supposed to believe he's like paralyzed by his fear of the ocean.
Yeah.
But like he yells at Nemo to come back and he says, you're going to be in big trouble. Yeah. Come back. Don't you dare.
Yeah. Come back here so I can yell at you more.
Right.
That's going to work.
It doesn't is the thing. And what he should have done is the thing is with parents is you have to be willing to go and get him. You have to physically go and take his fin.
Yeah.
And get him back yourself. I say this about, I'm definitely calling out some parents here and I apologize, but I say this about parents who yell at their kids to be quiet in restaurants when, you know how kids just scream sometimes?
Yeah.
They just scream for no reason. And that's fine, kids do that. But they say be quiet or else, but they're not willing to actually take the kid out of the restaurant and sit with them in the car for a while because they want to be out. They want to be, and you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to show that there will be consequences. Yeah. Otherwise it's empty threats.
Right.
Which is why...
And also yelling at your kid to be quiet doesn't really,
Yeah, it's probably not.
It's like yelling at your dog when he's barking at the door. It's like, oh, you're yelling too? Sweet. It's
Now, I did say that this would have humiliated Nemo in front of his classmates, but I think that ship has sailed. Oh, God. I'm sorry. That's just it's an idiom.
The boat has scooted. Yeah. It's
that's not better. It's still a boat reference in an ocean movie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm upset about. But yes, the ship has sailed. Nemo's already embarrassed, so just grab him. Get him away. So this is actually where in my notes I said that he's supposed to learn the lesson that he can enjoy life and let his son enjoy life, but he's right from jump. Yeah. And I'm going to reemphasize that. He's like, the ocean is scary and dangerous. And they're like, no, it's not. But it is. Yeah. He is right to be worried. He's right to be scared. His son gets kidnapped by a diver, immediately after he's like, this is dangerous. So he's right.
I mean, it could just be sort of this could be a bad lesson for humans, I guess. But the first day of school, he gets kidnapped. Yes. I mean... We don't want to be afraid of sending our kids to school because of kidnappers in real life, but this does happen in this movie.
Yeah.
The first opportunity.
It happens.
And
it's so he's just right that everything is dangerous and awful. And so Nemo gets kidnapped. And of course, I tell my students this all the time, but when you're stuck on a theme for a movie or book, the theme is usually the real monster is man. And Nemo does this as well. Finding Nemo does this as well, right? He gets kidnapped and then later the dentist is like, I found him struggling on the reef. I'm not going to try doing an Australian accent. Are you kidding me? I found him struggling and I saved him. And he's like, no, you didn't. You separated a loving father from his son, which... Right. No, because the ocean fish don't care. Yeah. But yes, so man is the real monster is one of the themes here. It's time to meet Dory.
Yes.
And Dory has a mental health issue.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a lot because they do not do a kind job.
Nope.
It's just,
Dory has short-term memory loss, and this is a joke because I think of the thing people say about goldfish have the 3-second memories
things,
and
which
whatever.
Is not true, by the way. Goldfish can remember things.
What, have you talked to a goldfish?
Yeah, lots of times. No, they do little mazes and stuff. They've done experiments on goldfish.
They put goldfish in a maze?
Yeah, and they remember how to swim it.
Oh, I want to see that. All right. Well, we'll watch that later.
Yeah.
So Dory has a mental health issue. She has short-term memory loss, which is quite severe. And it's something that the movie makers want you to laugh at 98% of the movie. Almost all the jokes in the movie are related to Dory and her short-term memory loss. We laugh at her not remembering Nemo's name, for instance. She always gets Nemo's name wrong.
Yep.
We laugh at her not remembering that the sharks are dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. But then I think it's right at the end,
Yeah.
When they think Nemo is dead, she says, like, I don't want to forget. Like, please, I remember things when I'm with you.
They play it very sad.
And they're supposed to tug on your heartstrings, and you're supposed to feel very bad for her. And you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
With that. You can't say, oh, laugh at her and her mental health issue, but then feel bad that she has this mental health issue. I also have a thing about the sequel that I never asked for, never saw, because I don't want to see that. But I think that it's highly likely that the sequel is all about her debilitating short-term memory loss. I saw the trailer, I think, and like they did this like, oh, look how cute she is as a little kid, and she doesn't remember how to find her family. So I think they took that one line from the beginning where she was like, it runs in my family. Wait, where are they? And they were like, let's run with that, right? And then also I'm willing to bet a small amount of money that they also decide to do a backstory on why she can read in the sequel.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I guess, it's a sequel, but also a prequel because it shows like flashbacks of her life. But it's a sequel. I mean, I will never find this out. Somebody can tweet at us, I guess. But I bet some amount of money that because she can read. Yeah. Like English, she could just read. That's a big.
Is
plot
there going to
point.
be something about her speaking whale too?
Yeah, probably. And here's a question I have: does Dory ever learn Marlin's name?
I don't know.
Ari's awake.
Okay.
We're going to pause here and grab him, and then we'll come back to it.
Nemo! Nemo, no! Nemo! Nemo, Nemo! No! No!
Okay, so Ari's with us now, noisily eating, as always. And we were talking about Dory learning Marlin's name, because Dory says, "Hi, I'm Dory," to him. But never once in the movie does he respond with, "I'm Marlin."
Huh.
Think about it. He never says his name to her, and she never says his name. She calls him, like, friend and buddy and whatever, but, like, does she just never know what this fish's name is?
She attaches pretty strong to somebody she's never learned the name of.
Yeah, I mean, like, later they have this deep moment that I just talked about where she's like, when I see you, I remember... But she doesn't even know his name.
It could be one of those things where, like, people never say goodbye in movies, like when they're on the phone.
Yes.
They just hang up because nobody wants to see that part.
Right, we just assume that
they at some point learn each other.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I missed one. I knew I missed one. Remember earlier when I was listing all the things that they know, even though, balloons. When Dory sees the mines by the submarine, she goes, "Oh, it is a party, balloons."
Yeah.
And Bruce says you wouldn't want one of those balloons to pop. They can be a bit dodgy, right? And so they even know that balloons pop. Balloons are notoriously not in the ocean.
Yes.
At least they shouldn't be.
They're very buoyant.
Yes. So they couldn't go underwater anyway. And so the fact that, like, every time you see something like this, I just think, like, why do these kids not know what a boat is?
Yeah.
And so, and then I have my nitpicky thing. We're actually moving along at a steady enough clip now.
Okay, good.
So, we'll see how we go with, just keeping this to 2 parts. But, with the sharks, so they recite their pledge, which is like, fish are friends, not food, right? It ends with fish are friends, not food. And then one of the sharks, so the great white shark is Bruce, and then there's Anchor and Chum. I'm assuming Anchor is the hammerhead shark because he looks like an anchor, but I don't remember. Okay. So one of them says, "Except dolphins." And they go off on a rant about dolphins, like, "Oh, I'm a flippy little dolphin. Let me flip for you. I know something," or whatever. But I have to say, if these sharks know what balloons are, they should also know that dolphins aren't fish.
I suppose.
So, you didn't know where I was going with that.
No.
I saw you looking at me like, why are you talking about that?
I was going to say, like, dolphins flip for people. They don't flip for sharks. Like, they wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
That's where I thought you were going.
That's true. Like, dolphins flip for people, so they would have had to have seen, like, a dolphin show, or whatever, which is another thing that they shouldn't know about. So that's just, it's a little nitpick of mine, but they say fish are friends, not food.
Yeah, dolphins
are fair game. They're not fish.
Yeah. And they're jerks.
But I wrote in my notes, then again, apparently sharks are not very knowledgeable because, ... next bullet point, are sharks not aware that fish don't eat fish?
Yeah.
They seem to be aware of the food chain.
Also, what are they eating? Are they eating kelp?
Yeah. They're eating, well, I mean, like, it's implied that one of them is still eating fish and just lying about it. But like, well, implied. I mean, it's I guess, I don't. What's stronger than implied? Explied anyway.
Yeah.
Because he spits out a fish skeleton by accident. But like, Dory goes up to the podium and says, I've never eaten fish, and they're like, just like, wow, good on you, mate.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess I'm doing an Australian accent anyway, badly, but like, you know, like, are they under the impression that every sea creature consumes fish, even the fish?
Right.
So it doesn't really make. Also, this is Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say, like, this is a 12-stepper meeting. This is like,
so we're gonna talk extensively about jokes that are appropriate.
Yeah, this is, I mean, like, this is something that like parents know about, and hopefully not all that intimately.
Although if they do great, I'm glad they're seeking help.
Yeah, I'm glad they're getting help.
But kids should not know about
it.
But
kids definitely don't know about, like, again, hopefully,
yeah.
These meetings in church basements where people talk about like how many days it's been since they've last whatever, and who is this for? I guess is the question, especially since it's not all that funny.
Here's another nitpick I have.
Yeah.
They're fleeing from Bruce, who has smelled blood.
Yeah.
And they go into a hatch in the submarine, and it closes on its own. It just closes as they swim past. And I have watched this like intently because, again, I've seen it so many times, and they never even touch it. It just decides to swing closed. Yeah. And yes, I would have been upset if they had paused to push it closed, because I would have said there's no way those two tiny fish could move that rusted machine. No, submarine. That's what I was going to say. Door. But still, it closes on its own. Yeah. I don't know. I
think the whole thing is sort of a reference to The Shining.
I was just about to say that.
So maybe the door closes in the same way it does in that movie. I don't remember.
I have not seen it because I can't watch horror movies because I will wet the bed. But
You'll have an oil spill.
I wrote in my notes, just children love references to The Shining. Yeah. Speaking of what we were saying. I'll have an oil spill. I heard that. Good callback. Like, speaking of jokes that kids won't get, he like the shark like bangs on the door and like pokes his head and he says, "Here's Brucey," which I believe is "Here's Johnny." In The Shining. So yeah, kids just love The Shining. It's also very convenient that Dory can read. Yeah. Again, I assume in the sequel that they go into it, but maybe they don't. Yeah. I'd actually prefer that they don't, because sometimes movies just let us suspend our disbelief, right? But it's just very convenient. I guess she has to serve her purpose, right? Other than teaching Marlin to be a fun-loving person who has friends. We are going to talk about scatological humor a little bit later. Okay. There's a very specific part where I want to get to it, I guess. I'm hoping my notes will lead the way. But there's a fart joke after the mines go off, because there's two pelicans or other waterfowl in the water, and there's bubbles, and one of them says "nice" and flies away, right?
Yeah, like, oh, thanks for doing that.
And I did laugh at that. I will say that. But
I think the joke there was that the mine explosions were so big, and then on the surface of the water was just a couple bubbles.
Yeah, well, I guess
it was kind of a mismatch.
We've already jumped out of order, so let's do this.
All right.
The first instance of it is when the little baby octopus in Nemo's class gets scared and inks, as she says. Yeah. And that is clearly her having an oil spill, we'll say. There we go. Yeah. And then there is the fart joke. And the dad octopus at the end of the movie inks.
Yes, when he sees the shark.
And I guess there is I'm trying to see if I Peach the starfish, played by the wonderful Allison Janney.
Yep, CJ.
CJ Craig says that she's monitoring the dentist's coffee intake.
Oh, right.
And she knows how much time it will take him in the bathroom, depending on what magazine he grabs. And so that is a reference to, feces.
When the blowfish deflates.
That could be seen as a...
Nah, it's I think
Okay.
so. I think that was the point.
And when Marlin and Dory are on the dock trying to get away from Nigel, they're stopped by a pile of seagull poop.
Yep.
So scatological humor in kids' movies, it's getting out of hand.
It is.
And
To the point where there's a poop emoji in a movie.
yeah, played by Sir Patrick Stewart.
Right.
I'm going to bring up some stuff, and it's going to get kind of gross. So if you want to skip forward like a minute or so,
Okay.
we'll be through this. But there's also a recurring thing of consuming feces in kids' movies.
Yikes.
Yeah. So one reference I'll bring up is Alvin and the Chipmunks, where Alvin consumes his brother's feces in order to try to convince Dave that it is a raisin. And then when Dave is gone, says, "You owe me."
Oh,
Okay, maybe my husband needs to skip
I
for
might
a minute.
need to skip this part. And I think I know what the next one you're going to say is with the Secret Life of Pets 2.
I wasn't gonna. Is there? Oh, yep. I was gonna say that, and I forgot. So why don't you say that one?
Okay, well, there's a point at that movie where they're trying to teach a dog how to be a cat, and they're showing that dog what a litter box is, and a different dog consumes the contents of that litter box.
Saying he found
some treats.
Yeah.
Which is super gross, and I'm sorry I brought it up.
Yep. And then if you skipped forward to this part, skip forward a little bit more. But what I'm going to bring up is Trolls, but I'm not going to say too much because we might do an Alan Guesses the Plot of Trolls later.
Right.
But there's a character in Trolls who poops out cupcakes, and then the main character, played by Anna Kendrick, offers them to somebody to consume. And that happens.
All right.
So this needs to stop. Like, the amount of poop humor alone is really getting to me, that like kids can only laugh at bodily functions apparently, but also this idea of consumption of it. It needs to stop. And then we're going to talk a little bit later about fake cursing in kids' movies.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which I'm going to have to bring up the Flophouse. That's why I said we were going to talk about the Flophouse. This is why, because Elliot Kalin, who's one of the hosts, has talked about this in their episode on Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
And so we'll get to that when they're actually there in the Tank Gang. But yeah, this is when we meet the Tank Gang, as they're called, making jokes of mental health issues because of Bubbles. That's his name. He's played by Stephen Root. Is that his name?
Yeah, Stephen Root.
And then Gurgle. By the way, I had to check the credits for this, or IMDb or something, because they never say his name. But the purple and yellow fish who has germophobia, his name is Gurgle. So there you go. Again, another like water-related name. Like all these fish have to have names that are related to water and ocean and stuff like that, and fish. But Gurgle has germophobia. And then there's Auntie Deb. And this might be a great place to end part one. Is just talking about Aunt Deb and being like, bye everybody. Auntie Deb is a bluefish, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the actress who plays her because I'm not familiar with that particular actress. She says to Nemo, who is scared because he is in an unfamiliar place without his father. Direct quote. "Kid, if there's ever anything you need, just ask your Auntie Deb. That's me. Or if I'm not around, you can always talk to my sister, Flo. Hi, how are ya?" And she says that into the glass.
With her reflection.
It's her reflection, right? She has mental health issues too. And it took me a while to figure out this joke because I have seen it a lot of times. It was delivered like a joke, but I couldn't quite get it. I thought it was just a joke about Flo being like water.
Flow like water, yeah.
But then I finally, like after time number 100,
Aunt
it hit
Flo,
me.
yeah.
Aunt Deb's sister would be Aunt Flo, right? If you're calling somebody Aunt Deb and they have a sister, you would call that sister Aunt as well. So Aunt Deb's sister is Aunt Flo. There is a menstruation joke in Finding Nemo.
Right.
So
a very antiquated one at that, too, because it's like, my in-laws are in town, and...
Yeah, I mean, like, people needing euphemisms to talk about it and stuff like that. But, like, so we already referenced this in episode 6 with Mrs. O'Toole.
Yeah.
But how did this make it past I Have an Idea?
It's such a throwaway joke, too.
Yeah.
Like, to just not do it.
Yeah.
Is
To someone
wouldn't change anything except for make the movie better.
Someone said like, "Oh, we can't miss this opportunity,"
Yeah.
or "Oh, people, it's a little Easter egg for people." Like, what? I don't want a period-related Easter egg. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
that is really weird. I was not happy when I figured that out.
Just an idea. Funnier here, or you can always talk to my sister, Deb.
Right. If we're gonna make fun of mental health, then
Yeah,
go
well,
for it,
you know, I mean, like that off top of my head, already better.
Yes.
Let's go.
Anything that isn't period related or poop related is better. And so I was really upset by that one because it was delivered like a joke. You know what I mean? Like there was that kind of moment where you're like, oh, this has to be like, they think this is funny, but why?
Yeah, and you have to think about it for a second because no one since 1967 has ever really made a serious Aunt Flo joke.
Right. And so all of their mental health issues are funny.
I think it's supposed to be because they're in captivity. They kind of gone a little loopy.
Right. But it is played for humor,
Yeah.
which is like, so this isn't like a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest thing. This is like, oh, how funny.
Yeah, how
They are
funny
all-
that they're so sad.
Yeah, right. I mean, and again, this plays back into man is the real monster because
Yeah.
we're confining fish and making them go crazy. This is true of Shamu.
Yeah.
Watch Blackfish if you don't believe
Yeah.
me, but it's not true of Fish.
And Gil
Like,
is the sane one because he is from the ocean as well. Like
Right.
he has freedom and context.
Oh, are you saying it's time to be done?
It might be time to be done, bud.
All right.
Aw. Say
All right.
goodbye.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye, son. Have fun.
All right. So, as you might have heard, Ari decided it was time to end the episode, and I think that he is right because this has gone so long. Alan is actually not here. He's gone off to tend to Ari, so I'm going to do the sign off all by myself. Thank you to everybody for coming back to listen. I hope you enjoyed what is part 1 of our talk about Finding Nemo. If you did like it, of course, we'd love to see some 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, subscriptions to it, sharing around by word of mouth. Please tweet at us at NotAgainPod if you have something to share with us or some questions to ask. We'd love to hear from you. If you are a marine biologist and you need to correct me on something I said, by all means, I want to learn. I love learning. Thank you to my husband who isn't here for doing intro and outro music for this program. And we will see you next Saturday for the thrilling conclusion of Finding Nemo. Until then, thank you for helping us to stay sane for just one more week. I'm Rebecca, and my husband was Alan, and we will catch you next time. Bye!